I don't know how well that's going to come across.
The all new sober sip it and rip it.
Sober. I mean, we never really drank to get drunk. Like we just kind of like had
all
a drink.
New temporarily sober. Sip it and rip it.
These Zoas are really good.
I'm sipping the water. He's sipping a Zoa.
Yeah. So I guess you could talk about why you're sipping a water.
Yeah. I'm going to make an attempt to do 75 hard again, but more than anything, more than 75 hard, I would like to finish it. Don't get me wrong, but really I'm trying to kick some food addiction problems. So back to my gallon of water a day, all the reading and stuff you're supposed to do on 75 hard. Done my cardio. I mean, it's been the food that's tripped me up. So I get to restart it in the morning, but no alcohol, all that stuff.
And usually, like, people will like mix alcohol and food. So, like, you drink some alcohol, you're feeling good. You start getting your inhibitions change a little bit.
And then
you're like,
fuck your diet up.
I can DoorDash some Taco Bell. Like, you know, you just start thinking about stuff like that. Especially if you're drinking a good bit.
We had Joe on last week, Joe Sullivan, and we deleted the audio somehow. But one of the things we talked about was alcohol in and of itself is not great for lifting, but even worse for lifting and then your athleticism. And then really, especially if you're losing weight, is all the things that happen in the periphery of alcohol, which is that lowering of inhibitions. You're more likely to sleep late, feel like shit the next day. You're more likely to overeat while you are drunk. There's millions of things that go along with just getting drunk, apart from the actual damaging things about alcohol. It has this huge fucking scope of, you know what I mean, of like consequences. Like that. It's kind of surprising that I would like to be over that and through it. And
he also mentioned like the difference between having one drink a night and having 7 drinks one night. It's exactly the same on your body. Like the way your body handles it and processes it is exactly the same. So it's like, fuck, like
if you're gonna do it, you might as well just save it up and binge drink one night. Just about. But you know, like even outside of my personal experience, like having weight loss clients, like do perfect all week, but they don't want to give up the party life or the party atmosphere. They go out with their friends on Friday or Saturday night, sometimes Friday and Saturday night. They get drunk, they eat Taco Bell, whatever that late night meal is, stop off at Waffle House on the way home from the club, whatever it may be. And you know, Steffi Cohen put it in very, very simple terms. If you're allotted 2,000 calories a day and you eat perfect 6 of 7 days, but on the 7th day you eat 4,000, you still busted your budget.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's okay if you eat 1,800, know you're going to do that, and you eat 1,800 through the week instead of your 2,000, and then use that 1,000 calories you saved up for a 3,000 calorie day on the weekend. Maybe that's fine, but most people don't do that. Most people say, I've done good 5 or 6 days of this week. I'm going to go ham.
Yeah.
And you're still busting budget. And maybe you're not busting as bad as you were prior to eating healthy, but you're still... And you're still spending more than you've been allotted. So,
and I mean, if you somehow have the mental fortitude to get drunk and then say, I'm going to eat a salad with some grilled chicken on it and no dressing, power to you, man. Like, go for it. But
most of us aren't going to do that. Most of us are going to opt for the highly palatable, tasty, not to mention thinking about just what time of the day you're going to be doing that, what's open.
Right.
Fast food and Waffle House. It's like I said, that's your option.
Waffle House doesn't have salads, unfortunately.
No. They might have a dinner salad or something, but I guarantee you it's not like...
It's probably trash. Yeah. It's probably garbage.
Probably not the best. I like Waffle House, by the way. I'm not eating salads when I go to Waffle House.
I was about to say, not knocking Waffle House, but I could not imagine going to Waffle House and be like, yes, I'd like a Caesar salad. Like, no. Like, that's going to be trash. They probably just have like brown lettuce from the garbage can that they throw on it. It's like this was on a burger that somebody dumped in the garbage.
It is what it is.
The tomato,
out on that. But that's why I'm doing it.
I'm not really doing it for. I mean, I had a drink or two this week, but I'm kind of just trying to limit it, and I don't want to be a bad influence on you. So we're gonna try and sip something alternative for a little while. And
yep.
I think Joe will be proud when he comes back. He is coming back, by the way, because he is one of the nicest dudes ever.
To help us undo what we've done.
Yeah, it was
help us undo what we've undid.
Yeah.
Are doing.
It was, man, that's still like, I was just like, it happened. We had such a great conversation with him. Like, it was so cool, and he was so like fun to talk to and very informative. And we got it all done. And like, we talked a little bit after, and then like we shut everything off, and I looked at the computer, and I was looking at Joe's video, and there was no audio. And I was like, you got to be kidding. And I knew like, cause I had run into that problem before back when I used to do YouTube videos, like gaming YouTube videos. I was like, there would be times where audio would not capture from my screen capture. And I was like, I knew exactly what happened. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is just the worst thing possible. And I was probably down for about 3 hours, like just mentally, just like I'm going to lay on the couch and I'm just going to not do anything. But yeah, I'm 6 weeks and 6 days out. So I'm just trying to limit alcohol intake until meet time's over. So
does that have, other than supporting me some and your own performance benefits, have you looked into like your medications for the meat? Is that also kind of prompting you to cut it back to? Because I mean, those things are hard on our liver, especially orals.
Yeah, so it typically when you take orals, which I haven't started and I won't start for a couple weeks, I don't believe. I'd have to look and see specifically. But yeah, it is harder on your liver. I do have a very healthy liver. I didn't ever drink until I was 25, 26.
Yeah.
Just pretty much a year before I was divorced.
Yeah.
And I still would only drink occasionally. So I never really did anything to damage my liver. So I've been able to be a little more rough on it here lately. But yeah, I don't want to take any crazy risks.
Sure.
I'm also going to start I've already started taking it. Excuse me. There it was. A glucose disposal agent from Better Through Biology called Max Uptake, which will also increase the effectiveness of the oral. But currently I'm just taking it with post-workout meals. And if you need to know more about that, you can look up Better Through Biology on Instagram and follow them. You can also look up Jakey B and Joe Sullivan. They both post about it regularly. So
really good explanations too.
Yeah. Better than I could ever explain it because I don't understand the science behind it other than
basically though, I mean, from what I gather, because we talked about berberine, I'm familiar with berberine because of a client. Mm-hmm. They're basically not necessarily diabetic medicines exclusively, but they do affect your insulin sensitivity mm-hmm. that affects how your body uses glucose specifically. Yeah. So, and glucose is, hell, I'm in anatomy too right now. We're talking about this quite a bit, the Krebs cycle and everything else. Mm-hmm. Really, really important to the production of ATP and glycogen and mm-hmm. shit like that. So,
yeah.
The more efficiently your body runs in that regard, the more efficiently it can use those things as energy as opposed mm-hmm. to storing it as adipose tissue.
And not to like plug Better Through Biology a ton, but they do now have injectable ATP, which is kind of insane. I have not used it. Can't say anything more about it, but if it is...
It does act as a stimulant too in your body, right? So
it basically just like, it gives you that extra performance, like, which is...
literally what ATP does.
Yeah.
It's your performance molecule of the body for the most part. Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I may try it at some point. I haven't decided yet. I would be interested to try it on some bigger lifts, which I haven't had any big lifts. Not crazy big anyway. But when we get to that point, I may try it and see if I feel good on it or not. And if I think it makes a big difference, I will probably use it for meet day. But you also have to be aware that it is like, so it is energy essentially. So it does it's like gas in a tank. Like you just use it as you perform. So you do have to be aware that it's not going to last you all day. Like it's not going to be there for the entire meet day. So I can't remember the time frame, but I know there is a time frame that you have to take it before your lift.
For your you being a pretty reliable deadlifter, though, I can imagine you would want it front loaded anyway on the squat. Right?
Yeah, I would probably want it for my squat session, because that's going to be the biggest challenge of my whole meet is going to be trying to hit 611 on squat. Everything else, excuse me, man, this Zoa is making me gassy.
Well, we swear they didn't put alcohol in anything.
I did not. You heard me crack it open, like, but no. So
that's been the discussion before the discussion. So welcome to the Sip It Rip It podcast. I'm Zach. He's Nathan. You can find us at ZG_Summer Shred Journey, which is the worst handle of all time, and or at Coleman Barbell, Coleman_Barbell, and then at Nathan Skedios, and then at Sip It and Rip It.
And if you're listening on Spotify, we also are on YouTube, Apple Podcasts,
all the podcast things.
Yeah, whatever RSS sends us through, that's what we got.
That's what we're on. Yep.
I think I'm gonna try and start putting the podcast video on Spotify, because that's an option, and I don't know if it's gonna like boost views or not, but I think it'd be interesting to at least give it a whirl and see if people like it or not. So
we getting into PR songs? Is that what's next?
Yeah, let's hit our PR songs. I think I've got a few. Hold them up. Boop, boop. I don't know if that went through.
I've got two, and you're going to roll your eyes at both, and that's okay. I've been in a not heavy mood lately, and I don't know, one song you might appreciate. I don't know if you listen to Thrice much.
Mm-mm.
But Thrice has a song that's a fucking masterpiece called Dead Wake.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a heavy song, but it fucking rips. Love that one in the gym right now. It's off a little EP that came out in 2022, I think. But yeah, it's a fucking awesome song.
Yeah. I don't remember if I said this one. I think I did on the other episode, so I'm just going to reuse it.
That's fine.
Domination by Within the Ruins.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah,
one. That on the deleted
on the episode that never aired, unfortunately. But that song still like gets me like just, I don't know. There's just something about it. Something about the lyrically when people describe domination, like it's just like it just makes me feel pretty like tough. I don't know.
That's fair. Mine is my second one is a off the wall one from the 80s. Not off the wall. Everybody's heard it, but is Same Old Situation by Motley Crue. Fucking awesome song. That's one of my all-time favorite bands. And yeah.
That's a left field one.
Yeah, that's a very different from anything I've put on the podcast.
Yeah.
But it's a fucking good song. I love that band. I grew up loving that band, and if you haven't ever watched The Dirt, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, dude.
That's their documentary, whatever.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's played by actors. It's not a documentary, but yeah, it's fucking awesome. It's amazing. Great movie.
There's another movie similar that, have you seen that Weird Al had?
I hear that one's good.
I'm sure it's fantastic because it's a parody of all the like other like, what did you call it? Biopics.
Yeah.
So it's like a parody. It's like, I forget which. There's one specifically that they took scenes from, and it was just like exactly like that, but it was Weird Al and it was flipped and it was really strange. But like, I want to watch it. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard. Good things.
The Motley Crue one, The Dirt kicks the shit out of all the ones that come out about the country singers. Like the Johnny Cash one, I like a lot, but it's a much better movie than that.
Walk Hard.
No, that was the one that made fun of it. That was a Dewey Cox story. Walk the Line.
Walk the Line.
Yeah. Okay. And then they had the Elvis one recently came out. Mm-hmm. The only other one I really like a lot, other than the Johnny Cash one and the Motley Crue one, was the James Brown one. Get On Up is an awesome movie. But the rest of those,
they're pretty bad.
Yeah, the Queen one was awful.
That's what it was. They were making fun of the Queen one.
Yeah, I can imagine, because that Queen movie sucked.
I didn't watch it, so I haven't watched a lot of those, to be honest with you.
Some of them are really good. I highly recommend The Dirt, but at the beginning of it, you would appreciate it too, because for like glam metal, they were like one of the heavier bands, and specifically like they kick one of their girlfriends out at practice because the girlfriend says they're too heavy, and they get fucking annoyed at the beginning of it when they're still just like kids and shit. And so it's kind of fun. And also they just had a really long and sad life as a band too. So pretty interesting. I like it. So what's your second?
I'm gonna go with one that's gonna be a little bit different, I guess. You know the band Andromeda?
Yeah.
So they do a lot of instrumental stuff. So there's a song from an anime, I know you hate anime, called Attack on Titan, called The Rumbling, and they did a cover of it with a vocalist, I forget his name, but it's really good. Like if you listen to it and you didn't know it was like an anime song, you probably wouldn't even think about it. But it's not like incredibly heavy, but it's a hype song. Like it gets me up. So.
Oh yeah. Did you see where Nick Nocturnal did a How to Slaughter to Prevail in 30 seconds?
No, I bet that's great.
Yeah, it is great. He decided to release a full-length one and Alex Terrible volunteered himself to do the vocals on it.
That's awesome. Has it come out or?
I think it's out. Yeah, I think it's out.
I have to listen to it.
It was. I just saw that at dinner. I was pretty stoked on that because the Lamb of God one was fucking great.
Yeah, it was really
spot
good.
On.
I forget who did the vocals. Do you remember?
The Brand of Sacrifice guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good song though. It's on my rotation.
Yeah, it's dude's pretty good at knocking down some stereotypes.
Yeah.
He gets some pretty spot on.
It's wild, dude. Like I haven't heard one where I was like, that's a stretch. Like they've all been really close.
So the How to Slipknot in 30 Seconds got my wife so bad that she can no longer listen to Slipknot and not laugh the whole time. Like, he was so spot on with that she can't listen to them seriously anymore. That's the only thing that
I can still listen to stuff.
It's the only thing she can think about is Nick Nocturnal making fun of Corey Taylor specifically.
I don't think he really makes fun of people, but he's just kind of like, your music is,
Well, I mean, he specifically talked about how Corey Taylor seems to get madder progressively through a verse.
Yeah, and it's true.
And because he pointed it out, Sadie just thinks that's so funny, and it just ruined her on Slipknot, apparently.
Oh man, that's unfortunate. They've been around forever.
Yeah. So how about the gym this week?
Gym was pretty good. I did a lot of weird breaks this week. Like normally it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday on the dot. I feel like I did like Monday, Tuesday break, Thursday break, Sunday, because I'd just been like really exhausted, like for whatever reason.
So you lifted today?
Yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I say Sunday? I meant Saturday.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know if you. I wasn't trying to correct you. I was just trying to figure.
No, I was just like, did I say Sunday by accident? Like I don't. But I didn't lift today. I mowed the yard today. That was my. That was good enough for me. Man, fortunately, it's not as hot anymore, so I'm like not dripping sweat the whole time. But it's really just the weed eating and like the little bit that I have to push mow because I can't get the riding mower in there. But anyway, it's been a pretty good week, but I had to take some weird breaks, just too tired. And I talked to Joe about it, and he was like 100% behind it, and he was just like, do what you got to do. Don't go in there feeling shitty.
Yeah.
So I had a really positive day yesterday, Saturday. And it was like, it wasn't a barbell day or anything. It wasn't like doing anything crazy. It was a normal, like lift, like a bodybuilder type day. But I just kept on adding weight to everything. And I felt I did the whole stack on the tricep extensions for 15. I mean, I was progressively building up. I started kind of low.
How do you feel about that machine? Do you feel like it has gotten better for you as weight has improved on it? Because I have a hard time. I don't feel like it does for my triceps what I would like for it to.
So just to clarify for listeners, we're talking about the one where you sit your elbows on a pad.
It's like a reverse preacher curl.
Yeah, push down. So for me, I've always gotten a really good tricep pump out of it, like every single time I've ever used it. So I feel like it's just gotten better through time. The biggest problem for me was just my core was like being strained because I was having to kind of like get into a position and hold myself and keeping myself straight while using my tricep. But Honestly, like it's never been a problem for me. I've always felt really good on it. So I think it may depend a lot too on how you set it up. Because the way I have it set up is where I'm pretty low. It's like about to my chest, and then I put my elbows on it.
Yeah.
And that may be, I don't know how you set it up.
Yeah, I could probably set it up lower if you're going to mention it that way. Yeah.
I feel like that's optimal for me because I feel like this position right here gets me the best stretch for my triceps.
That's fair.
The best push. So
we have similarly built upper bodies, not the rest of us, but that could definitely probably help me out a little bit.
I feel
I've
like
used it more, more often, but
I enjoy it. But it's not the only one. Well, right now it's the only one that I use. It's not the only one that I've ever used. But for now, like just because I only have one tricep extension a week, and it's on the last day of the week, that's just what I use.
Fair.
Everything else is either cables or dumbbells. So, but no, it was really good. I put an extra 50 pounds on the machine press and really fried my chest. Which it's not even that. It's really interesting as someone who can easily press 375 pounds, throwing 2.5 plates per side on the machine press gets me. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's just different stimulus.
It just feels different. Like it's
shit. Think about the reverse. Hell, I have a bodybuilding client. He's my transformation guy. Fucking out presses me on almost every machine. Can't fucking barbell press 250 pounds.
Right.
It's like, I mean, you just get adapted to one thing or the other. But I mean, those new stimuluses are important for us, and that's probably a lot of the reason why things are coming up for you.
Yeah.
You are on days he does kind of turn you loose. You are for the most part dominating your lifts.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been really good. Funny thing, and it's a segue into mine, which is a segue into our topic today. Do you find that the more advanced programming you get into, the more and more bodybuilding we do?
Yeah. So it's really interesting the way Joe has kind of done my programming. It's been a lot of like, you have specific days where you go in with specific mindsets and specific intent of the day. So there's 2 days a week where I do barbell stuff. I'm a power lifter. That is my focus. I'm there to lift heavy weight, to make sure my barbell work is good, strong, my technique is good, and that is my focus for that day. And then I have the 2 bodybuilding days or athlete days, depending on what part of the block we're in, or the whole, what would be the term for several blocks? Mesocycle, yeah. So depending on where we're at, it may be more heavily leaning bodybuilding, maybe more athletic jumps. I'm still doing med ball slams like before I deadlift. So there's like different things, but yeah, it's interesting. But I do believe that going in with different intents psychologically is advantageous, because when you go in on, when I go in on Monday to squat and bench, I know I have to be in the mindset to be a power lifter and squat and bench. So the next day that I come in, that's a bodybuilding day, I don't have to put all that focus in on being a power lifter. I just have to focus on stimulus. I have to focus on
getting a pump,
metabolites, all that shit that makes your body grow. That's the only thing that I'm focusing on. I'm not really focusing on strength. I'm not really focusing on power. I'm not focusing on powerlifting. It's just be a gym bro that day. And it helps with your psychological side of things too, because you're not always so stressed. Like if you have so many barbell days, you're like, I gotta squat this day, and then tomorrow I got a bench and it's gonna be heavy, and God, man.
And then Saturday I gotta turn around and deadlift heavy after I squatted heavy on Monday.
Yeah. And there's just this whole lot of stress when you have so many and that's one of my biggest takeaways from working with Joe, is that I do feel like leaning not necessarily away from a lot of barbell work, but focusing on specific days for barbell work and specific days not touching a barbell.
Yeah.
And I think moving forward, that's how I will program myself, which I will be away from Joe for a little while, but I'm going to eventually go back to Joe when I prep for my next meet, whether it's nationals or something else local.
Whatever you qualify for, right?
Yeah. So we'll go from there. But my mindset on training has definitely changed in that regard.
I hear you. I think I think mine's a little bit more basic than that, and I've just gone back and realized, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, how having a high level of general fitness, when I say general fitness, we've talked about that as being more of a bodybuilding background, but being stronger in as many different ways as I can benefits my barbell stuff directly. Yeah. So I'm more and more focused on, like, what I do on dumbbell overhead press matters to my bench press. Yeah. What I do on leg press absolutely matters to my squat. Lat pull downs matters to my deadlift, those kind of things. But also, like, having a mindset where we don't minimalize those movements because they're not on a barbell.
Exactly.
They're 100% important. They 100% matter. And they're arguably, I wouldn't say they're not more important because we're powerlifters, but arguably they are as important. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's like when you think about, like, if you're going up for a squat, generally speaking, when you think squat, you think quads, right? Yeah. But there's also hamstrings, glutes, your upper back. There's this whole chain of muscles that are required. So if you look at programming in that same vein of, I'm a power lifter, so I have to squat, bench, and deadlift, and that's the only thing I'm focused on, you're neglecting all that support.
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely are. And that's, that's huge. And let alone, the psychological part that you mentioned is something we got to dive into with Joe a little bit more. And I can imagine when we have him back on, we will more. But that's, what I'm doing for myself is not even getting that deep. It's literally, how good can I be and how many different areas can I be good in? Pretty good example is, y'all have heard me bitch and moan about, I do not like doing arms. I like doing triceps better than I like doing biceps, but by and large, I would much rather be doing back or legs is my favorite thing to do in the gym. Like, I would much rather be doing one of those things. But treating a dumbbell curl with the same intent I treat my bench press, or treating a skull crusher with the same intent that I treat, whatever other lift, has really, really made a difference in my size and my overall strength. And we talked about me anabolically. I'm on a quarter of as much anabolics as I was in prep with Ron, and I think I'm just as stronger in my lower body, but I haven't had the nuts to test that out yet. But by and large, I'm stronger on less drugs, and a lot of that's because of the way I've shifted my thought process to the intent in which I'm doing it. And now in this new block gets me to what I'm doing. I did in the gym this week. I started a new block this week. It's pretty volume heavy. Me and you kind of discussed it, but because I'm on 75 hard, I have 7 days worth of work to fill up. So one of those things, if I don't get to everything on the days I have it programmed, I can kind of move it to Sunday and go into the gym and make my 45 minutes in the gym that way. So it's really no big deal, but I've gotten to the point that I do have less and less barbell work, but the intent is, the stimulus and the stress is higher with less total work involved, if that makes sense. My volume is much more intentional on the barbell, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for lower body, for instance, I only have one top set and I have two working sets, drop sets afterwards. Upper body, I do 1 and 3, one top set and three drop sets. And then I'm done. So my barbell is a total, and I'm not talking about like necessarily West Side prescription, but my barbell is a total of 15, 20% of my total workout. And it's helped. And it's helped recovery tremendously. Yeah. I'm going 7 days a week now, and I'm recovered by the time I have to deadlift again, which is pretty fucking cool when you're going 7 days a week. And the only thing I've managed to do this is, the only thing I've managed fatigue-wise really is my barbell stuff and when and how I'm doing it.
Right. Is everything else kind of just like you sit at an RPE 8, like all your accessory work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I program it kind of loose-ended, but I know based on how I feel that day whether or not I'm going to train an accessory work to failure or not, right? Like, I'm probably not hurting myself. I'm a very, very big fan of, I'm not going to hurt myself over a fucking dumbbell bench press.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I'm not pressing the 150s just because I can press the 150.
Right.
I just need, I'm kind of like your bodybuilding days. I know I just need a pump. I need the stimulus and we can get out and go. We need that unilateral movement for balance and stuff like that. But, I'm not really going ham. I did get out of pocket one time this week, and this finger's still swollen. Pretty bad. That's normally a really loose fitting ring.
Yeah.
And
fake burden, everybody.
Yeah. But on my ring finger, I was doing pull-ups on 3x3 like square tubing instead of a pull-up handle on the back of the Smith machine, mainly because I was too lazy to go from one side of Planet Fitness to the other side to go find the pull-up bar. So I just said, shit, I'll just dead hang off the back of the Smith machine and do some pull-ups here. And my second set, my ring finger popped. Like, dislocated it, and I'm pretty sure I have some ligament damage because I have very, very stiff hand. And it popped again deadlifting yesterday. I had been trying to do all of my lightweight deadlift days, double overhanded and beltless. The double overhand got it. To be fair, though, there was no warning signs that it was going to get worse. It was because, I had an EMOM yesterday, so I worked up to three plates and a quarter for like 10 sets of 2 every minute on the minute. So it was an easy day, weight-wise. And 315, when I warmed up with it, it didn't do anything to my hand, so there was no indication that I was going to hurt myself again.
Right.
But I ended up hurting myself again, and now I'm permanently stuck on the mixed grip right now. Mixed grip's no pain. But I got out of pocket.
Yeah.
That kind of shit happens. But all in all, it was a good week. I do feel like I'm getting stronger. Primary squat day, still SSB. I think it helps posture, stuff like that.
Helps your quads.
Helps my quads. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you still doing heeled shoes when you squat?
No, I'm squatting flats and have been for a long time. Heeled shoes feel a lot better for me if I'm squatting high bar in a front squat. They probably would feel better in an SSB, but I just don't feel like changing them because I have to deadlift immediately after.
Yeah.
It's an RDL, but still.
You have to change your shoes a lot. I know I get frustrated having to change my shoes.
Yeah, just a pure leg day. I could probably get away with heeled shoes a lot. I actually ended up selling my only heeled shoes to a client of mine. He really needed them, though, ankle mobility issues.
Yeah.
But I squat fine to depth in flats. So, I don't really.
Yeah, if you don't need them, then
I don't feel as though I need them. So it just is what it is. But it was a great gym week. I'm looking forward to this block. There'll be an interruption sometime this block because I have a baby going to be here soon. Yep. But by and large, we keep getting stronger, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Which I guess what we're talking about today is the changes I've made. You kind of already touched on the changes Joe's made for you, but what we're doing for myself and more advanced, intermediate, higher, upper level, intermediate, and higher lifters of mine. I've changed programming and my philosophy on this stuff a lot, and one of them is that I've quit. And I believe it works for a long time, but I've quit doing linear progressions or perfectly linear progressions for intermediate and higher level athletes. Mostly men. Women still for the most part, they respond pretty well to a linear program. Yeah. So they recover a lot better than we do. That's an absolute load thing. So I'm sure some of my heavyweight girls, maybe Casey, maybe Heather Calvert now. I don't know because she's gone down 3 weight classes and is still just as strong. Thank God. But most of the time on even Desi, who's not really one of my heavier girls, but Desi being really tall, I've always trained her like I train my heavyweight girls, because she's so long limbed.
Yeah.
Athletes like that, my female athletes like that will definitely get this treatment too. But mainly I'm talking about myself, Austin Blair, Joey, even Dave, who, even though he has a modest total, he's almost 60 and is about to compete at IPL World. So, he's extremely strong for his age.
Yeah.
So all the, and with him, it's about age management more so than fatigue management, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But largely I've started undulating. So if you don't know what that means, basically I'm waving volume and intensity opposite of one another a lot of the times to better control recovery and things like that. So good example is I mentioned this was my light deadlift week. On my deadlift week, I did roughly about 60% of my 1 rep max for 10 sets of 2 every minute on the minute. So very limited rest. It was very, very easy weight. Didn't strain myself, didn't kill myself doing deadlifts this week. next week, when you and I and Zach Marciller go and work out at the garage, that's my high day. So I'll have a double at 480 plus pounds, and then a couple of drop sets of 5 in the mid 400s.
Mm-hmm.
Much heavier than what I just did this weekend.
Yeah.
And then it'll be back to a low week, back to a high week until I finish the block. Mm-hmm. Doing the same thing with squats, and I'm doing this. I'm actually going to do the same thing with bench press this time too.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Most of the time, like with Austin's last block, I kept his bench press linear.
Yeah.
Because most of us, if you're not just a complete and total fuck up, most of us recover pretty well from bench press.
Yeah.
Can handle a pretty good bit of stimulus and upper body stuff. But because I really believe in shoulder growth, and I really believe in the overhead press and what it can do for somebody's total, I've started kind of doing, Austin specifically wanted to train more incline, so he doesn't do overhead press. He does dumbbell overhead press, but he's basically swapping a heavy bench day and a heavy incline day every other week.
Yeah.
But stuff like that to manage fatigue. But what we won't do is he will never, or at least for the rest of his time with me, we're probably never going to do a heavy bench day and a heavy incline day in the same week. Mm-hmm. Same way we're probably not going to do a heavy squat day and a heavy deadlift in the same week.
So I do want to ask you this, just out of pure curiosity. What about the idea of doing, like, before his meet, having an SBD day that is, let's say, 95%? Like, so maybe openers.
I have done SBD days with Steve Sides, and he really, really likes that. But the way I do that is Steve's on a 4-day-a-week plan. Mm-hmm. So he has basically a squat day, a bench day, and a deadlift day. And then on his SBD day, we're doing all of our secondary movements.
Right.
So his SBD day may look like 3 singles at 80+% of SSB, 3 singles at 80+% on close grip, and then maybe a deficit deadlift. Mm-hmm. That's how I've done that to manage fatigue so far.
But I'm just talking like maybe a couple weeks out or something, like more of a mental preparation thing. Like,
yeah. So I kind of, depending on the athlete, we take openers. I still like the Monday before for women, especially a lighter weight woman. But I typically do openers anywhere from 7 to 14 days out.
Yeah.
And all 3. And you've done that with me before. That's something we've done. Heavier weight lifters, I give them the option, and I generally take about 15% off the opener.
Yeah.
So it ends up being singles at about 75%.
Right.
But I don't want to mess with their recovery going into meet day.
Yeah.
So all these guys' last heavy deadlift is 2 weeks out from meet day, and their last, not to the day, but in terms of the program, is 2 weeks out from meet day, and their last heavy squat is 1 week out from meet day, and their last heavy bench would be the same.
Yeah.
So they're hitting that last heavy deadlift 2 weeks prior to the meet. I started doing that because of Ron. That really, really helped my deadlift and really, really helped me stay healthy for most of prep. We just kind of discovered that because I'm a pretty good deadlifter, I just didn't recover very well from multiple 500+ pound licks a month.
Yeah.
Really, we got to the point Austin hasn't got here yet. He will probably. Really, me and Ron got to the point where I only had 1 heavy deadlift day a month. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be every other week. It could be once every 3rd week or
more,
or whatever you need. I know a lot of professional strongmen only have about 1 heavy deadlift day. Not one deadlift day a month, but 1 heavy deadlift day a month. So I feel like that's worked out, and that's by and large that's what I do. And then there's lots of benefits to volume. The number one thing is you get an opportunity to practice your sport. In terms of the top sets and the drop sets, it does 2 things for me and 2 things for my athletes. One, it gets them in a lower rep range sooner to adapt their CNS to what we do sooner, but it also keeps them in volume longer.
Right.
So most of the time, top sets are, I do this differently from different people, but like the heavier the athlete, the bigger jump there is. So like Austin just came off of 6s and 12s. His top set was a set of 6. All his drops were sets of 12. Mm-hmm. About half the volume on the top set, essentially. don't do that for everybody. I'm not doing that for myself. I'm doing 3s and 5s. But I started taking that approach because that only leaves them doing a couple of heavy sets a month, one, with the undulation. And then two, like I said, it allows me to keep them in volume for longer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing. You might see a good example of this. You see Jamal Browner do this with his deadlifts all the time. He'll hit a top set of, he's probably hitting top sets of 1 right now, I'd imagine, or 2 because American Pro. But, he's doing 1 to 3 reps as a top set, and then he drops down and does sets of 5 to 10 with whatever other weight or whatever. But you see pros do this all the time with their barbell volume. And my first introduction to that was Brandon back in the day, before I hurt myself. Well, actually, it was after I hurt myself, after I came back from the adductor tear. We started doing top sets of 5 and drop sets of 10 plus reps. So I feel like it works really, really well. And also, once you get to a point, man, it's hard to do 3 or 4 sets at 85+% of your 1 rep max. And depending on how you recover, and a little bit different for women, but depending on how well you're recovering, 85% might be about as much as you can lift that day.
Yeah.
Legitimately. So it's really, really hard to do a linear program where you have, the last 3 weeks of your linear program is a set of 3 at 85, and then the next week you're going to set of 3 at 87.5 or 90, and then you're getting on 92, 95, only to rest 7 days before meet day and try to find a new 100.
Right.
That's fucking tough.
Yeah, dude.
And that's expecting a lot of things. We control what we control. We talked about with Joe. That's expecting a lot of things away from the gym to go extremely well too.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't plan for life very much. But if we can say, hey, we're only going to do this X amount of times a month. First of all, mentally, I feel like it's a little bit better for the lifter because they don't have to fucking get the shit kicked out of them every fucking week. But also, I think that they look at that number and they say, Joey's a perfect example of this. He's vocalized this to me. He looks at that number and he knows he's got a big set at 530 coming up on deadlifts. He knows he has to be well rested, hydrated, well fed, and he should be taking care of himself like that every day. But when he looks at that and he sees he competes in November, he only has a finite number of these lifts left to do as much as he can do. The mindset of the lifter, especially in an intermediate lifter, changes from I'm just going to get in there and do the work to this work's really serious because I have a limited number of times to do this. And it seems to be more productive, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And one big thing for me that working with Joe is that he's done something. It changes depending on the week, but sometimes he does have the top set, drop set. Sometimes he has me starting with the drop set at some low weight, focusing on something different, and then transitioning into something heavier. Like this past week when we were doing deadlifts, he had me doing 315 tempo to the knee, and then a pause, and then a fast lockout. And then after 4 sets of 2 on that, which is very modest, we went into 445, or I think it was 445 for 3 sets of 4, which is still pretty modest for me, but we were focusing solely on technique the whole time. Like that was the entire focus of that deadlift session was getting the technique, making sure, because there were a few things we were working on, specifically like slack pull and stuff, that we really wanted to hammer and dial in, make sure that going into heavier lifts in the future, that I was going to lift exactly the way it was supposed to be. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go back and look at well, maybe not, because I've been posting a lot of stories instead of reels, but.
Yeah, I think that you're still programmed with an A to B approach. You still got to go from this person has a 1,500 pound total on the platform and they want a 1,600 pound total. You still have to take them from point A to point B. But
it's not a straight line.
It doesn't have to be a straight line. Yeah, absolutely. It can be a roadmap. Right? You can take turns and U-turns and
ups and downs,
double back and ups and downs and everything else that you need to do to get there. So it doesn't have to be perfectly linear. And I've known that for a long time. The fact of the matter, linear progression does work, and it works for most people
until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't. the majority of people are intermediate lifters, though, and it will work for them forever. You know what
true.
I mean? But we are on the cusp of, you specifically, and Austin specifically, are on the cusp from going from an advanced level of intermediate to advanced or elite, even. Y'all are like right there on the cusp from no longer having to use the term intermediate for yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, both of you have the highest 2K potentials, I think. And I think Joey will get there too. But the three of y'all have the highest potential for those things. And I just think you just have to start looking at things different, because you have to start looking at longevity too. As a linear program beats you the fuck up.
Yeah.
And the heavier it is, the more it beats you up. So
just to put things in perspective, and I know you've kind of already touched on it, but you look at someone like Dan Grigsby, who's pulled 1,074. His 85% is going to be close to 900 pounds or is 900 pounds. How many times can he lift that?
You only have so many of those in your life.
Yeah. You
not in your training block, but in your life. You have a finite number of those.
I think I see him pull in between the 800 and 900 pound weight range primarily.
Yeah.
Like that's where he stays at for most of his lifts.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen him post anything above. I think 874 is the heaviest I've seen him post since he's competed.
Yeah.
And you think about that, that's leaving it is leaving 300 pounds on the table.
I remember I'll do you one better. I remember Brandon Allen talking about, I was still with him when he squatted at 1018 or whatever in Australia. I remember him saying his last warm up backstage was like 725 pounds. His opener was over 900. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, so his opener might not have been over 900, but it was 400. It was 881 at a minimum. So like, you're talking about somebody that, he had touched some bigger weight I think that prep he touched 970 for a double, but that was one time too. You know what I mean? And you think about that percentage, man, that percentage still matters. It still counts for these heavy lifters too. And you think, like you said, oh, you got 1,000 pound deadlift, 800 pound deadlift's no problem. Well, it's still 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be about a 5 rep max or better, but like, it's also still fucking 800 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's still like ridiculously heavy on your body.
So percentages are like a little deceptive. It's a little bit different when you have a female lifter that has a 100 pound bench press and 80% is 80 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen girls take that for a set of 10 and not be able to hit 105. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's the problem with a linear program, especially if it's percentage based sometimes, is as you get better, the further it is away from the truth, right? Before you got with Joe, me and you had this issue with your deadlifts. We talked about in your deadlift program, what you were going to do your drop sets at.
Yeah.
And you had them at 10 pounds. I said it needs to be 10%.
Yeah. And you were absolutely right.
And 10% was like, the problem is 10% for me is 60 pounds on deadlift right now. For you, it's 65 or 70. But guess what? 90% is still 90%. Yeah. Just because you're pulling 630 that day instead of 700, that's still a fucking lick, dude. Yeah. That's still a heavy deadlift. That's a heavy single. So you kind of got to account for like that growth in a person. Yeah. And it's very common for male lifters, especially when they get up and advance. You're not always going to be able to hit. You're definitely not always going to be able to hit 100% of your 1 rep max, but you're not always going to be able to hit 90% of your 1 rep max. Yeah. So one thing I learned from Shako back in the day, which I don't necessarily agree with entirely with Russian programming anymore. There's still really good takeaways from that. But Boris Shako said, if that your ability to grow your 1 rep max was basically how well and how many good reps you could accumulate at 85 or up. At 85, not at 90 or up, not at 95 or up, but how many good quality singles you can combine at basically 85 or up. Well, 85 is a number we could probably hit a little bit more often. Right. So you're talking about these guys, like, they know if they can consistently hit 85+% in prep, even if it's for singles, there's still enough stimulus there that's what Shako theorized. The stimulus is still good enough to grow. Yeah. As long as you're hitting 85+%. Right. A few times in prep.
I think the big thing is, like, for me, and the way I kind of view it is like you want the majority of your training in that between 70 and 85%. I think that's ideal. Like most of your training should be there. Yep. There should be days when you push past that. There should be days where you know.
Always. You have to overreach a little bit. Yeah.
So you always like, whether it's an AMRAP, whether it's just like busting out a heavy single, double, triple, whatever, heavy set of, like the most heaviest set of 10 you've ever done, whatever it is, like as long as the majority of your training was within 70 and 85%, but you have certain time periods, planned time periods, where you are, like you said, overreaching or trying to push your limits, your boundaries, that's going to stimulate that growth. But the majority of your growth and your ability to lift is going to be just training that 70 to 85%.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest with you, there's an incredibly large amount of hypertrophic value in 40 to 60.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I've gotten in the habit of starting more and more off seasons, not necessarily on the primary lift, but I do a lot of variations in the off season for people. SSB is one of my go-to. I make that a primary lift for people in the off season. We might start a volume block on SSB at about 40% of your back squat. Mm-hmm. It's going to be for a pretty good bit of reps, 10 to 15, depending on if they're male or female and depending on their total. But like, that still works pretty good too. Mm-hmm. And it's also a weight that they can control, and we know that we can manipulate time. We know we can manipulate rest a little bit better there. We know we can manipulate several like external factors that's not necessarily related to the weight, I guess, on the barbell. Yeah. There's other ways to get that stimulus, right? And then like when we're actually in prep, like I'll be honest with you, where when we used to might be doing sets of 8 with 70 to 80%. A lot of times my athletes are doing sets of 3 to 5 with 70 or 80%. And then they're doing doubles between 80 and 90. And maybe singles at 90 to, 92 and a half or something like that. But I've definitely like shifted my thinking more toward, you have all year to worry about hypertrophic quality, and you have the rest of, you have your accessory work like Joe's doing with you to worry about hypertrophic quality. I've focused more and more on how well an athlete can recover from that set of 3 or 5 or 1 or 2, whatever it may be. And less and less about how many reps can we bang out 10 reps with 80%. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know the math says you should be able to do 10 reps with 80%, but it's just not fucking ideal to do week in and week out. And it's mainly too, a lot of this came from, I got tired of beating my fucking self up. And a lot of wisdom came from doing some conjugate stuff where I was doing extremely low rep ranges on my barbell work and still seeing good growth from it. Because I was that's kind of where I started taking accessory work a little bit more serious. But I knew that if I could accumulate X amount of good reps, like I squatted in bands a lot, if I could get, 70 to 80% regularly for sets of 3 in bands, that I probably it was going to translate to a bigger back squat, especially if it was higher quality, better depth, stuff like that. Like, I just don't know. I think there's a million ways to do this. And the thing is, we've talked about before, everything works until it doesn't. And when you get to a more advanced level, you do have to think about longevity. And that's when you start thinking about how many quality reps can I acquire versus just how much volume can I acquire. You know what I mean? Like, the quality of the volume begins to matter more than the volume itself, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm kind of rolling back a little bit and kind of repeating the same topic or the same point. But, when you get to a certain point, you get these heavy, let's say you 600-pound deadlift, working with 400 pounds, like you can really focus on, like you said, the quality of the lift. You can manipulate your technique more. You can implement things like, maybe there's room to improve on posture or leg drive or explosiveness or your hips or positioning, whatever it may be. Like, I feel like that may be more important at this point in my life. I think that may be more important than focusing on muscle growth, is just focusing on better technique all the time. Making sure you go in there with the intent to lift perfectly. Every single rep has to be the same.
Yeah.
If you go in there and you're going to go to deadlift, you're hunched over and you're just, doing this shit, and you're just like,
you can't expect that to translate as well as a high quality rep does.
If you're not focused, if your main goal is not to lift perfectly every single time, I don't think you have any right to be going in there trying to perform a 1 rep max.
Yeah, well, I mean that's true, but coaches have tried to tell people this for a long time.
Yeah,
we've tried to tell ourselves that for a long time. You know what I mean? And each other that, and something that we talked about with Joe is like what separates good from great. A lot of the times, your willingness to do things that other people wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Your willingness to control what you can control. And that's one of the most basic things somebody can control in the gym, but ego a lot of the time does get in the way.
Yeah.
And that is something I think now this perfect utopian idea of what powerlifting should look like, and that every beginner should do everything perfect all the time.
But that's not realistic. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem with, let's start a political conversation. It's the problem with the idea of this utopian idea of powerlifting that every beginner is going to do everything perfect. Fact is, they're not.
Yeah.
They may not even have access to allow themselves to be able to do those things perfect, whether that be knowledge or equipment or coaching or anything like that. You know what I mean? Most of us start this because we think it's going to be fun and it's just a hobby, right? In the beginning.
And it's totally fine if it is just fun.
I'll be honest with you. I've shifted my thinking from, should those people be doing things to the best of their ability? Absolutely. That's what a coach is for. If they have a coach, that's great. If you can set them down a better path earlier on, that's great too. But I think that's a very happy-go-lucky idea of what it's actually like. In reality, people really aren't going to start focusing on this like they should until it means getting better, either physically because they've hurt themselves or leveling up to a bigger total or something like that, right? I think the actual decision to do this takes a little bit of wisdom and some
scars,
and some willing to look inside and kind of reflect on what you're doing and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, as coaches, we do everything we can to make sure people are doing things right and as correctly as possible. But we talked about this too. We've talked about this a lot. In the beginning, you're just less body aware.
Yeah.
Like I remember getting cues like in the beginning, like what are people talking about? Like, and it wasn't even that I couldn't grasp the concept of what they're talking about. It's because I couldn't actually feel for the muscle because I didn't have a mind muscle connection to whatever they were talking about at that point. Like some of this stuff really does come with experience. Like you have to be able to, if you want somebody to do something specific with their lats, you can cue people into a better position. But if they don't actually feel what you're talking about, there's going to be a little bit of translation loss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can cue them to do it as correctly as they can, but like, me and you know what to do with our lats and every major movement. Like it's easy for, not always necessarily, but it's a lot easier for Joe to say, hey, I need you to do this particular movement because you've been in the gym longer than the guy.
Right.
You know what it feels like or what it should feel like, or you at least have an idea of what he wants. Like it's hard to expect someone brand new, you have to do this.
So I realized after you explain all this, my mindset where I'm talking from is more of like intermediate and up level lifters.
Yeah,
when I was speaking, I wasn't really thinking about beginners, but I'm glad you brought that up because I think we've talked about this before and may have said these exact words. Beginners, you just want them to get a few things right to get started. Yeah. Like there are a few certain things
we
keep
want them
them
to
from
get enough.
hurt.
Yeah, do things right enough they're not going to hurt themselves.
But generally speaking, unless they're like really deconditioned or they have really bad muscular atrophy or something,
mobility.
The weight they're going to be working with is probably not going to hurt them. I mean, it's possible. I just saw my great aunt today at my mom's house, and she was talking about she hurt her knee. She was at PT for 4 to 6 weeks. She went to a gym, got a personal trainer, working on her knee. Her knee's perfectly fine, but she was doing a little arm stuff and hurt her shoulder. I can't imagine she was working with heavy weight because she's my great aunt. I don't know how old she is. I think she's 80.
Yeah.
I mean, she's older, but like it's possible. It is possible to hurt yourself with minimal weight, but for a general, like, you get someone off the street, maybe it's just a kid like 20 years old, never been to the gym before, and he's just trying to like get in. He's probably not going to hurt himself on something light. He's probably not going to work with weight that's going to hurt him, unless you got a dangerous coach, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, somebody that's super responsible can get somebody hurt in a heartbeat. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't necessarily saying that's what you were after, but I do think that there's this like expectation that everybody should do everything perfect. But I do think that the want to do that just comes with time and wisdom.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything other than time or wisdom is going to convince beginners to intermediates to start working on that more. Not to say that they can't improve in technique, because they will. If you're a coach and you're cueing them and getting them in better positions and doing your job, they're gonna get better.
If they are listening to you and taking it in.
But they're not gonna. My point is, they're not gonna have this hyper awareness of it like you and I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the more mind to muscle connection you build in the gym, the better you can control these finite details. Right. Perfect example of this. You've been working on glute activation and stuff with Joe. He diagnosed you with gluteal amnesia.
Yep.
Well, that's because you didn't have a mind muscle connection with that. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Like a new person does not have a mind to muscle connection with their lats yet. So you can say, do this with your lats, do that with your lats. Unless you give them a physical cue, you're probably not going to get what you want out of them.
Yeah.
Just by saying, do this with your lats.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, what the fuck's a lat? And you can tell them, you know what I mean? We talked about that with Joe. You should tell them and give them the educational answer. But like, they don't have the mind to muscle connection to just
be like, oh, these are my lats. They go here. Yeah. Which just because we don't have that episode, Joe specifically said you should give them the scientific answer as well as the dumbed down kind of meathead general population answer.
So that's the one that's going to click.
Yeah.
And then you hope you have a client that cares enough to understand the why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when they understand the why, then I understand his point behind that. He's still really good at cueing people in a simple way.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that to be insulting to him when we talked to him.
I don't think
but if you can cue something in a simple way that people understand, then the why clicks a little bit better. And I think he's really good at explaining both. But, I've talked about this ethically as a coach. You should be coaching people in a way that eventually they will not need you. And then also coaching them good enough that they don't want to do it without you.
Exactly.
That's the retention's about a relationship. And
it's also about just continuing education on the coach's part. They're constantly learning stuff, so they're passing new information on to you all the time.
You're growing as a lifter. And you may be growing as a coach too, if you coach and are coached. Those are all really, really quality things. But yeah, you want to educate these people to the point that they don't really have to have you, but they just want you now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the ethical way to teach anything, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I have had my first powerlifting coach. Maybe he didn't know I was as smart as I was about this stuff, but he was very, very much the type that wanted to cue something simple and withhold information. Like, well, I want to know why. Like, he wanted you to always need him. that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not an ethical way to.
At this point in time, with so much free information out there, especially from people like Joe Sullivan, he does Q&As all the time. You have access to all this information. It's really hard to even try and withhold information from people, because if they want to know, they're going to find out.
Yeah.
And if you're withholding it from them and they find out from someone else, that's going to reflect poorly on you. They're going to either be like, you either didn't know this or you withheld it from me specifically, and both are negative. Now, if you just genuinely don't have an answer, you say, hey, I honestly don't know, but I'm going to find out. People are more likely just going to be like, okay.
You're still building trust there.
Yeah, because you're being honest.
Oh, well, as long as you go see it through and actually find the answer. And by the way, that coach I mentioned was not Brandon or Ron. So they're both great coaches. It was my coach before either one of them. But yeah, I mean, all those educational answers and everything definitely have a place. They're definitely important. But like I said, I think the things that you're working on now just come with wisdom and being in the gym. It's just not something I see regularly from the gym bro community at large. I do see it more often with clients and former clients. You know what I mean? Want to know the why, and they want to know technically how to get better and how to improve on these things. And it's simple, honestly, too, if you think about it, it's a good return on investment, because if you're consistently working on getting your technique better, that's going to result in a larger total with very, very little repercussions on your body and your CNS.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a very, very minimal investment with huge returns.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you just think about the energy that you're putting into it.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the big things Joe has been pushing. I've said this a million times, the intent on the lift, that can make or break your session. If you go in there with the intent to be perfect on your deadlift, and this is how I felt on bench press. I'm just going to say bench press specifically. So Joe has been giving me specifically low numbers on bench press that I feel like not necessarily insulting, but I'm like, I know I can do a hell of a lot more than that. I know I have a lot more in me. So I make sure that every single rep, I do it perfectly. I do it with maximal force, maximal output. Just make sure that those reps are as clean and ferocious as possible.
Yeah.
That way I get the most out of what he's given to me.
Yeah.
And if you can't, that just, it milks the reps.
It does. Yeah. You're getting the most you can out of it. I tell clients all the time, make me wish I had programmed this heavier.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to, but make me wish I had have.
Yeah. And I wholeheart's believe that's what he's doing.
Make me proud. Make me wish I would have done it 50 pounds heavier than what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like that's the intent that I want out of a client. But that goes back to another thing pros say all the time. Squat U points this out to a lot of people, whether it's Olympic lifters or powerlifters. They'll post somebody up and say, look at this squat. Look at Juwan Garrison go from 145 pound squat to an 800 pound squat, and every squat looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then also Juwan is lifting the 145 with the exact same amount of violence and intent that he lifts the 800 pounds with. Yep. Like, there's a reason why that guy's the fucking best in the world. And that's detail, attention to detail. Mm-hmm. And something we talked about with Joe was a willingness to control the things you can control. And your technical prowess is something very much within your control that you should be controlling. We've talked about this. My clients are the direct benefactor of me having learned everything the hard way. The worst I've hurt myself every time I've done it has been on sub-maximal weight.
Yep. It's always
never been on a max effort lift.
Yep. It's always just been stuff where you didn't respect the weight.
I didn't respect it. I didn't respect my technique. There's a lot of things I didn't fucking respect. You don't even have the self-respect to do it right. You know what I mean? Like, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I know that about myself now. I mean, everybody's been there.
We all grow from it.
Yeah, absolutely. But, and I try now to squat the empty bar the same way I squat 500 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is what it is. It's harder when you're having squat sets of 10. It is a little bit harder to be in that frame of mind than when you squat a 1 rep max.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're at least getting, I would say in that situation, if you're getting the front end right, if your setup's good, the first 1 to 5 reps is great in a set, fatigue's going to take over. It's going to start looking like shit by the time your set's over, sure. But, if you're at least repeating the same processes you go through on a heavy lift over and over and over and over again, and building routine, I think that's incredibly powerful.
One thing that I would say about that, though, let's say your form does start breaking down. Do you not think that you should just stop? Just like, my technique has gotten bad, so I just need to stop.
No, see, Chad Wesley Smith talks about this at Juggernaut. Technical development happens oftentimes in weight ranges that challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're squatting, sets of 10 is pretty challenging for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably going to happen somewhere, depending on the person programming. It can happen anywhere from 50% up to 80.
Mm-hmm.
80 is probably way too much for a set of 10, to be completely honest. But you have a wide range, but sets of 10 are tough, period. But, Chad talks about the feedback that you get from those reps that start to diminish can start telling you the things that you need to work on away from the barbell.
Yeah.
Are you starting to tire out because your glute activation is poor and you're shifting? One big thing, like the way people shift in a squat.
Mm-hmm.
Are you starting to like good morning squat? It's probably because you have weak quads, and your body's becoming more and more
posterior dominant
as your set goes on. Well, now you know you probably have a weak core and you probably have weak quads. It's anterior stuff, right? So I think that the feedback you get from not necessarily maximum effort sets, but from sets that are heavy enough that challenge you is incredibly important. Because, I mean, how many things has Joe seen in you at a weight that maybe not even super challenging, but as he said, oh, well, this broke down right here. You need to change this or you need to change that.
Right.
And maybe the word breakdown is not something he used, but hey, you did this a little bit different or something like that. Most of the time that's going to happen when you start to fatigue. So I think that the information it gives me as a coach is incredibly valuable. That's that utopian idea of everybody should be perfect all the time. And I realize that is what it is, but like that amount of feedback's amazing.
It's valuable,
it's extremely valuable. Yeah. And it's not necessarily because your form breaking down is beginning to get dangerous.
Right.
Not always. You know what I mean?
But you're not, so I guess when I'm thinking of form breakdown, I'm thinking of you're just absolutely hunched over, you're dying. But what you're talking about is more like
those subtle differences that start creeping in as the set progresses, right? Okay. Like, is it becoming more and more of a good morning squat or,
are you sitting in the hole a little longer on each one, having trouble locking your hips out, stuff like that.
Things like that. Absolutely.
Knee valgus. Like
a good one for people pulling high volume deadlifts, anything. And I say on high volume deadlifts, I'd say anything 3 reps or higher. How much worse is your setup rep?
Right.
People start neglecting their slack pull, how they set their back up, how they set their lats up more and more as a set progresses, right?
They start rushing it because they're fatigued.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess from that aspect, what you start seeing is where are their priorities on their deadlift? What are they prioritizing in their setup as opposed to like the first one, obviously they're making sure everything's right. 3 and 4, maybe it's like,
my
lats are, I just don't care about them.
They're fried.
Right. I'm done trying to set them up, or my glutes are in so much pain. I don't want to shift my hips forward. I don't want to, push off the ground, whatever it may be.
That's real biomechanical feedback as a coach that says, this person sucks at lockout. He needs more RDLs. This person, the good morning squat, he needs to spend more time on leg extension and leg press or belt squat or whatever you want to do with it. Or maybe more time on an SSB.
Yeah.
If it could be a postural thing that's causing that. But like that's really, really, really quality feedback that I don't want to miss out on as a coach.
Yeah.
I don't want to push you to the point that it's impossible or that you're failing.
Right.
That's bad for you mentally and hard on you physically.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how great you are, very rarely is, especially when you're talking about volume, is rep 1 going to look the same as rep 10.
Yeah.
And I think what you get from rep 10 is just as valuable as the information you get from rep 10 is just as valuable as the one that you get on rep 1. So, and again, too, this high volume stuff, it is practice. I've talked about that a lot. Like, that's your opportunity to practice your sport. You shouldn't shy away from more volume is going to effectively make you a better squatter. It just needs to be, which is kind of the original topic and why we got to talking about programming and why my philosophy changed. It just needs to be quality volume. You know what I mean? But that it's not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Pretty good rant.
I think so. I think we covered pretty much everything we thought about.
Yeah,
which was it was interesting enough for those who stuck around. It was kind of on the fly.
Yeah,
we kind of just winged this one because Mar Stiller was supposed to be with us today, but unfortunately he couldn't. But we will have him next week.
We're all going to train together Sunday.
That'll be fun.
He's a lot fucking stronger than me.
I've got to get with Joe and say, hey, I need my day 1 a little early so I can lift on Sunday, and hopefully he won't rip my head off. But I think he'll be okay with it. As long as I don't train on Saturday, I think he'll be okay with it. Yeah. So I got to make sure I get my normal Monday, Tuesday.
I kind of almost thought you'd push day 4 off to Sunday, but
day 4 is just an accessory day. It's bodybuilding day.
So you don't want to be in there.
I'm not gonna go to a gym with a monolift and do leg press.
Yeah, and they have combo racks for bench and shit too.
Yeah, so I've got squat and bench on my day 1, so I figured that'd be a really good opportunity to lift out of a monolift and bench press. I'll have spotters. I'm not sure how heavy it's going to be, but it'll be nice to have spotters.
Yeah.
which he hasn't programmed me heavy enough to need spotters yet. I mean,
that's fair. Yep.
375 is the heaviest lick I've taken for a double or a triple, and pretty freaking easy. RPE like 6.
Yeah, very easy.
And that's
very good.
And that's not me like blowing
smoke up anybody, his own ass or anybody else's.
Not going around saying RPE 0 with strain, my face turning red and my neck vein popping out. God, that pisses me off so much. Let's have a small rant real quick. Let's have a small rant about people who...
A coach, nonetheless.
Fucking dude, I don't understand. Like, first and foremost, and I don't like calling people out on shit, like, but when it becomes just like glaringly, I don't know, it just pisses me off really bad. Like it's like you want to like push your athletes and you want to be like, man, these guys are awesome, they did great, all this stuff, but you don't want to blow smoke up their ass, right? Yeah. Like, you don't want to push them into a position where mentally they're somewhere where they're not and they go hurt themselves.
Yeah, you don't want to tell somebody something's an RP 6 when it was an RP fucking 10.
Right. You don't want, like, that's just being dishonest with your clients, and it's a disservice to them. It's a disservice to you.
Yeah.
Like, it's a disservice to the community. Yeah. Like the entire powerlifting fitness community, like all of it.
There is a nuance to this, in that everybody's RPE looks different. I have somebody right now, and Joey Miller, he's an incredibly slow squatter.
Mm-hmm.
Takes him forever to get through a set. You would think that every rep he did was an RPE 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I have adapted to that, and I know what an RPE 7 looks for Joey now versus I know when things are maximum effort. There is some nuance that happens that we don't get entirely just from spectating from something.
Right.
That being said, when you start seeing those technical breakdowns we mentioned,
mm-hmm.
and you start seeing them happen rapidly, more and more frequently, you don't get to call that there should be no technical breakdown in RPE 6.
None.
There probably shouldn't be too much technical breakdown in up to about a 7.5.
Yeah.
More than likely.
I'd say
so.
Even
sure
at an 8,
don't need posting a client up deadlifting, visibly pulled out of position.
Mm-hmm.
You can call it a misgroove if you want to. I don't believe in the RP. If it's an RPE 6 with a misgroove, sorry, bud, that was an RPE 9. You don't get to call, just because it's normally an RPE 6 for you, doesn't mean it was an RPE 6 that day. That's why we have the rate of perceived exertion. It's auto regulation. It's going to change from day to day based on how you feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're having visible technical breakdowns, you as a coach or as a lifter probably shouldn't call that an RPE 6. You know what I mean? Like, be honest. Like, I mean, the top, and specifically the video, and we're not going to say specifically who or what it was a deadlift video, but we're not going to say who it was. If he would have said that's an RPE 8.5 or a 9, I would believe that based on that lifter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's some technical breakdown there. Maybe this person fights through a second.
Right.
I could see them fighting through a second round.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like RPE 0 yawn, and this person is pulling with everything they got.
Right.
Like 100. It's obvious that this person is like balls to the wall. Like, it's a heavy lift. Like, boy, that's just.
And here's the thing. Here's the biggest thing for me. There was, like you said, there was technical breakdown. There was no quad in that deadlift. It was completely spinal pull, which is dangerous, first of all. I don't believe...
And then you're going to encourage that by calling it an RPE 0.
I do not believe in that. That is extremely dangerous. And, like, you're going to get one of your athletes hurt. Like, that is absolutely the only thing that is going to happen. And I'm not saying this to be mean or to call people out or to be, I'm saying this because people as coaches and athletes need to just pay more attention to their technique, period. I've been on this tangent basically all night.
Yeah.
But like, if you're not focusing on your technique, and I will promise you, you can scroll through my Instagram feed. I have some shitty deadlifts in there and I was super fucking proud of them. And now I look back at them and cringe and say, how did my lower back fucking survive that? Because that was shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another thing too, though, as a coach, if you're going to call that, obviously the RPE 0 thing was tongue in cheek.
Mm-hmm.
Still, probably he was implying that it was a 6 or 7.
Right, something easy.
Okay, just based off of programming, what the hell? Where do you take that person, knowing that to achieve whatever RPE, which is apparently a made up number now, to this particular coach, what do you tell that person when they go around and you program them RPE 8 at 10 or 15 pounds heavier than that, and it doesn't break?
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, well, you were supposed to hit that. Why didn't you hit that?
Probably because you called her 1 rep max an RPE 6.
Right.
When it was very clearly a 9.5 or 10.
And that, again, you know what reflects poorly on the coach for making a bad decision for...
Where do you take them? If you're going to blow that much smoke up somebody's ass, like, where do you take them from that?
To the emergency room after they have a disrupted spine.
I mean, that's the funny answer, but just programming alone.
Yeah.
There was a reason, okay, and I got pissed off about this. I wasn't pissed off at Ron. I was pissed off that he didn't trust me with more weight, if that makes sense. There was a reason why Ron would say, you're going to pull to an RPE 8 today, but you got a cap of 565 today.
Right.
I knew I could pull 565. I didn't want 565. I wanted 600 in RPE 8. I probably could have pulled 600 in RPE 8. But he knew that if he fucked around too much and gave me something even if it had been a 9, it could have changed the trajectory of because of recovery. It could have changed the trajectory of, well, great. If 600 is a 9 now, he's going to fully expect to be able to pull 620. What happens when he doesn't break that?
Right.
Then I have all this fucking psychological work to do on this athlete too. He would much rather know, I gave you an RPE 8, I capped it at 565 for a reason. He would much rather me walk out of the gym with a little bit of swagger, acting like, oh, I told you so, coach, than have to put my mind back together 3 weeks later when I miss the next one.
Yeah. And you think about that, if you're that close, like you're lifting that heavy, that close to a meet, you're going to be in such a bad spot going into the meet because you're going to be broken mentally. You're going to be like, I missed a lift like 4 weeks out. Yeah. That's not good. That means I'm off plan.
As a coach, I'd much rather piss you off underrating an RPE and assigning you that than doing the opposite, which this person has done, letting them kill themselves and then telling the whole world they had 3 or 4 more reps left. Yeah. That's bullshit, bud. That is bullshit. Like, definitely fucking didn't have that. I mean, definitely didn't. It's incredibly dangerous and irresponsible. Yeah. Incredibly. And that's somebody that's either going, that I feel like that person's a smart person, so they will either figure it out or they won't. I mean, and if they don't, they're not going to have a very long career in coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. Going back, this is another little side rant. That was my problem with the CrossFit community. They wanted to rah, you did great at everything you fucking did. There was always like, hello.
We have visitors, apparently.
Apparently we have visitors. They wanted to rah, you did great at everything you fucking did in there. You pulled a new PR, great. There was no fucking feedback as to what you could do better. If it was in passing. It was like, oh, maybe you could do this a little better next time. Just work on that. Like,
there wasn't a drive to be
There was no like incentive to like, let me tell you something. Sometimes you need somebody to be like, 1, that was awful. 2, you're lifting outside of your means right now, or at least out of your technical means. And 3, this is what we're going to do to fix it. If you don't like it, then you're just going to continue to be bad at this.
Right.
Like, you need somebody to tell you suck. A rah attitude does nothing for you personally, does nothing for you emotionally, does nothing for you as for your growth as a person or as a powerlifter.
No.
Does it feel good to have somebody pat you on the back and say good job sometimes? Yes. It should always come with great job, that lift was killer, but let's do this, and this better next time.
Unless you did a great job, like genuinely, you lifted perfectly, whatever.
You know as well as I do, though, if you're talking about the RPE range, this person actually
in this
pulled,
situation, no.
actually pulled,
yeah,
versus what they were told they were pulled. there was plenty of things to correct.
100.
If you're lifting an RPE 7.5 or higher, there's going to be something in that set to correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're fucking Eddie Cohen or you're brand new to it.
Mm-hmm.
There is going to be something, and maybe the details are more finite the better the lifter is.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that. Like the adjustments I would make in you are much different than the adjustments I would make into somebody that just started.
Yeah.
But there is going to be something to correct.
Yeah.
Period. And it should get corrected. If you're a coach, it should get corrected. Period. That's what they're paying you for.
Right.
So
that's one thing I've been very fortunate with Joe is that because he is extremely knowledgeable, I have my own fair share of knowledge. The transfer there is very smooth and easy. And there have been very few times when I have asked Joe, like, I don't, like, tell me what you mean because I don't understand. There has been times that I have, and recently even talking about hamstrings with my deadlift, he was talking about something that Ron actually talked to you about, being very straight-legged and then reaching down for the bar and then pulling the slack out, bringing your knees in. That was my whole process of fixing, that was the whole process that we were working on this week.
Fixing slack pull.
As opposed to where I normally would, which props to Joe, he said, it's good, but it can be better.
Yeah.
Like he understands that I have skill here. I have the knowledge. I'm doing things correct.
Yeah, we're not here to cut you down.
Right. Things are technically correct and things are technically going good, but they can be better if you do it this way.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely right, because as soon as I did it, I was like, wow, this feels like...
That's a really good deadlift cue, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very
yes, it was...
And learning to treat yourself like you're wedging yourself is a much different feeling than just pulling slack and sitting down.
Yes, because that's what I'd been doing for the longest time. I would have my knees bent, I'd bend down, and then I'd set my lats and I'd push my knees in. It's so much different. There's so much more tension when you're straight-legged.
Rowing it to you, basically, and then sitting down.
And then, like, getting your knees forward and then standing up with it. I felt so much stronger, so much snappier. Like, it was...
Also, that teaches you how to take advantage of... Me and you have to train on stiff bars because where we're at. That's going to make a deadlift bar that more advantageous.
Yeah.
You're going to be halfway done with your pull by the time you fucking pull the slack out of the bar.
I'm so excited to pull on a deadlift bar.
I mean, so, like, you know, that's another one of those stimuluses he said you can control. I get really annoyed when I have clients that exclusively train on the deadlift bar. Because I feel like, well, that's not, I know you need to practice on one to an extent. It no longer is at an advantage if that's what you have to pull on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and there are some situations where I'd say you probably should always pull on it.
Yeah, really, honestly, probably last 4 to 6 weeks, you should probably be pulling on the deadlift bar.
I mean, even like, I don't know, for guys like Dan Grigsby and stuff, maybe you should always pull on a deadlift bar because the weight's so heavy, you kind of have to replicate everything to an exact.
You're definitely talking about, you know, a 1 in 10 million athlete.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about the elite, over here, whereas...
And we also know from our education, the way we've educated ourselves through Juggernaut is the better you get at the sport, the more sport specific your programming has to be to get better. So those are nuances that are really kind of saved for the super elite, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
By and large, though, it's advantageous to pull on a stiff bar.
Yeah. It essentially forces you to pull at a deficit, right? Because you're not getting as much slack pull. The bar is not bending as much. So you just kind of have to.
Every deadlift competition or mock meet I've done, I have put weight on my deadlifts. It's because I really 100% credit that with I never pull on a deadlift bar until it's time to pull on a deadlift bar. So, I mean,
and just this is again more elite of the elite stuff. But if you are going into a competition with a kabuki bar,
you should probably practice on it.
You absolutely, because the whip is supposed to be really crazy. It's supposed to be way more bendy. So be careful.
And I thought I understand the reasoning and the logic. Let me preface this, but there is a specific group of powerlifters here in the state of Alabama whose coach will bring in whatever bar is being deadlifted on that day, so they can do all their warm ups on that bar. But I mean, I'm not saying there's no rule against it.
Right.
So more power to them, but it's a little cheesy to see all your competitors have to warm up on a different bar than you. Yeah. Knowing that you're going to go pull on the same bar.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess that's good to have the inside track on that, but like, boy, it's pretty fucking cheesy watching somebody walk in with their own. It's almost a little bit like we're better than you when somebody walks in with their own bar to the warm-up area to warm up for a powerlifting meet.
Those are the people that you just got to put in their place. That's what it boils down to.
I tell you what, that's a strong demographic. That's one of those demographics in Alabama, because we're in a smaller country town. And I feel like people think I'm shitting on our demographic here, but we have a lot of extremely hard workers that do have true 2K potential. Mm-hmm. But because we're in a metropolitan area that is literally an eighth of the size of the areas that the two biggest powerlifting teams are from, the amount of talent that they have, in my opinion, far exceeds
what we have here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that gap's always going to be harder to close, because I'm never going to have the demographic that they have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's all there is to it. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about the demographic I'm talking about is literally just a larger demographic. There's more people to pull from.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a specific group of people or anything like that. It's just literally a larger area.
Right. There's more people, so there's more likely that there are going to be people who are athletically inclined.
If you go watch, it's the same thing as if you go watch fucking Hoover play football, it looks a lot more like college ball than if you go watch Good Hope High School, a 4A go play. Mm-hmm. That's just a lot larger talent pool. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's a bigger metropolitan area. You got more kids, so you're going to have more talent, period. And I think that's, I've talked about it before, that's an advantage that some coaches have that the rest of us don't. And that's a hard gap to close because of that, though.
Right.
And in Alabama, this is still a relatively small sport. So that means those areas have a large demographic. And because there's very few gyms in the state of Alabama that do that and specialize in that, that means they're going to have the monopoly on that entire demographic. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that is interested in powerlifting.
For now.
Yeah, absolutely. Those things can change, and we hope that they do. But
we'll work on bringing a real powerlifting gym up here one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope to. But, but that's been good, because that's allowed me to expand. I have a big footprint in Decatur now.
Yeah.
So it's gave me reason to expand outside of Coleman County. So that's good. And I'm getting talented people because I've expanded the demographic that I'm available to. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. But that's a really funny and curious thing. Bringing in your own equipment for your athletes to warm up on.
Is it just deadlift bar, or do they bring in a squat bar?
I've only ever seen the deadlift bar.
Okay.
I think for the most part, we're all on. I think there's a few meets that do like Rogue power bars and Rogue squat bars, but I think for the most part, we're all on
Texas
everything, right? Like one meet in Huntsville specifically that I was at recently had it deadlifted on a Kabuki deadlift bar, and
they brought in the Kabuki bar. Yeah. Well, it is what it is, I guess, like.
I mean, maybe I'll have that much money one day and I can just,
casually buy.
Hey, you know what? What kind of combo rack are you guys using on the platform? That's what I'm gonna drag. I'm just gonna drag that and all my own plates and barbells to the warm up area. We'll just set it up outside.
Right.
Have our own little warm up area.
Just let us know when our lifters are up. Yeah. It'll be fine.
Yeah. We'll send somebody in there to listen.
Just have like a really big trailer.
Nobody else can use it.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have our own warm up area brought in and specifically catered to for us, so that we can lift on the same equipment as we are on the platform.
So have a trailer that's like a mini gym.
Yeah, that's it. Just fold that bitch out. might as well put a taco stand in it too. That way
Well, I want to be careful about the tacos, depending on what's in it. Now, if we're doing like shredded chicken, some rice, lettuce, just don't want to go too heavy.
I'm pretty sure most probably aren't worried about that. That demographic, that team might be, though. They're good. They're fucking good. Listen, they're fucking good. Like, I mean, it is what it is.
We just got to be better. That's all. That's the name of the game, is being better. Like that, just because they're good does not mean someone else cannot be better than them, even just for a day. They can have a bad day. You can have a great day. That's sports.
That's why we play the game. That's sports. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not upset that they're good.
That's just,
I'm happy that they're good.
Iron sharpens iron. So you see all these people like, man, these guys are pretty good. how do I get that good? How do I beat them? And then if you beat them, they go, where'd that guy come from? Like, who is this guy?
This is definitely an ego conversation, and
we'll wrap it up after this.
We'll wrap it up after this. But I see what you guys have done, and I'm going to include you in this. I know you're Joe's now, and you're not mine. It is what it is. But
I was originally.
But
yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. But I've seen you guys and how far you've come, and we've got to X amount of level with people like you and Austin, and a lot of my girls are incredibly competitive, and they win more often than they lose, to be honest. We've gotten to this level. I just have to wonder what I could do if resources were equal.
Right.
If I don't even have a combo rack. I've got nice bars. I don't have calibrated plates.
Right.
I don't even have competition collars.
Right.
I don't have a leg press. I don't have a leg extension. Don't have a leg curl machine.
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I just wonder, what I could do if resources were equal. Even without, I don't have to have the demographic right now. Even if I had equal resources, what could I do with equal resources?
Right.
I'm curious. I have people going and winning meets, and they squat in a commercial. They do everything in a commercial gym. Me and you still do. It's mom and pop place, but like it's still bro gym.
Yeah.
We've never got to lift regularly in a powerlifting centric gym. You have to wonder, like
what
would your prep look like if you were on calibrated plates all the time and out of a combo rack all the time? And if for nothing else, for me, mentally, it's a comfort thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm much more comfortable competing in the same equipment that everybody is, whether they realize it or not. It's subconscious. I just want to know what I could be capable of if I had, as a coach. I know I'm a shitty athlete. Nobody has to tell me that. But I want to know what we could be capable of if I had equal resources. And, maybe one day I will, and I hope to. But, I feel like that's the only really large delineating factor right now.
Right.
So
it is interesting to think about. We won't really be able to tell until we do have it. But
another thing, and it's because of people like Joe that we've talked to him now, and that you have him, and Ron, who's a great. I think Ron's the best coach in the state of Alabama, and I'm not blowing smoke up his ass. A lot of that's just his care for the person, and not even the program. It's just to have Ron on your side, as a fucking asset. I think he's the best. But having people like Joe and Ron and Brandon before, and even each other now, because you know as much or more than I do.
I definitely don't know more than you. Let's just be honest.
But looking at it on paper, I am planning for things that I know other coaches aren't even considering.
Right.
Like, I know for a fact the things I started working on today with Austin, inspired by Joe completely, but I know for a fact other coaches aren't considering those things. So I just want to know how much of a difference it is. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to be desired, because I do feel like I'm working at a deficit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
you're working on a much smaller budget, essentially.
Yeah. And I'm having to do more with less, if that makes sense. So that's what it is. Not complaining. It's fun.
Right. Being innovation comes from necessity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there you go.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? Yeah.
Is that what it is? So there you go. I got it reversed, but it's the same thing. Yeah. I do want, and I know we've been running and we keep saying we're going to end it. I do want to mention one last thing, and it's just from a psychological, like a sports psychology aspect. I think it was February, March, April, somewhere around there, when I originally started getting ready to prep, like mentally kind of prep and get ready for October, because I knew I was going to do another meet this year. And I told myself my goal was 700-pound deadlift. So I've been saying this the whole time. I read a sports psychology book, audiobooks, listened to it while I was working. And they mentioned this thing of just repeating it over and over again, visualization, all these things. Yeah. So, and it just kind of dawned on me today. I had been kind of a little worried about my deadlifts because they felt a little weird. Obviously, they felt great this week, so I'm not really worried about it. But I'd been kind of like, oh man, what am I going to do? Things don't quite feel right or whatever. But because I had been saying it for so long, and because I had mentally visualized it so many times, today I was thinking just randomly, how am I going to celebrate my 700-pound deadlift? Like, I've already done it. Like, mentally, I've already done it so many times. I don't even think about, like, is it going to go? What's going to happen? It's just going to, like, I've done it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. It really dawned on me today because it was just like, I was just mowing the lawn and I was like, what if I did this? Like, there's, and it's really funny. And Desi's going to be really annoyed if I do this. There's this wrestler, and we've been watching him a little bit lately. And his whole thing is he looks up and says, yeah. And I'm thinking, like, what if I just do that? Like, I pull that 700 deadlift and I just let it go, yeah. It was just like, but it was like, mentally, it was just like, when I do this, it's not a, can I do this? If I do this, it's just, I'm going to do it. Mentally, I'm there.
You're in a strong spot then.
Yeah. It's interesting because physically, like a couple weeks ago, it was just kind of like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like there was still some lingering doubts that would pop up. But every time I think about a 700-pound deadlift, it's not, is it going to go? It's just, it's already happened.
Right.
And how am I going to celebrate or whatever? It's just really interesting. And I just wanted to bring that up in some way, shape, or form.
Talk positively to yourself.
Yes.
That's an incredibly powerful thing. That's what he's talking about. I really believe Nathan's going to pull the 700.
I've already done it.
But it doesn't do the athlete any good for me to believe that they're going to do it necessarily. Yeah. You really need to believe yourself that you're going to do it. I mean, I have two athletes, big meets coming up. Joey and Lance, both of them are prepping great. They're doing a good job. I have on paper what they're supposed to do, and convincing them that they can do it it's half the battle. You know what I mean? What shows somebody that is confidence building up to those heavy days. You know, Joey's already doing things that he's never done before. Like, so he's going to be much more confident when he gets under that heavy weight and stuff. But it still isn't going to. He had a bad day the other day. He was dehydrated and missed a deadlift. First miss of prep. Misses aren't planned for. I don't give you weight expecting you to miss it.
Right.
That doesn't mean no good. Doesn't you no good. Mentally, it puts you in a crappy place. But like his ability to, what we did though, is he was upset about it in a moment, but we talked through, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do, what did things look like before you got to the gym today? Turns out he was way behind on water. Dehydrated. Dehydration is a 15%.
Yeah.
It can be up to a 15% strength deviation. Well, he's programmed at a 575-pound deadlift. He missed 500. Guess what that was?
Yeah, that's
to the number. It was about 15%.
Yeah, 75.
Well, actually, it left his. He missed 500. It put his theoretical take 15% off of his strength. It put his theoretical one rep max at like 489.
Right.
So like that, a dehydrated, that 489 would have been his capacity that day.
Right.
So like, but he didn't. Don't tell him that to discourage him or anything like that. It's like, hey, this thing that you could have controlled would have got you here.
Right.
When you go to do, in 2 weeks, when you go to pull your 530, what are you going to do different? Like, and that that reinstalls some like confidence in him, because he did all his drop sets and stuff like that. And he was like, well, you're right. Fuck. Like, I'm going to drink my fucking water next time. You know what I mean? I'm going to be prepared when I get to that, get to that point. But like, it's things like that, even in a miss, even if you make it, like, that reinforces confidence, and that he believes that he's going to do fine at 530 next time. Yeah. He will, as long as those things are taken care of. But I fully believe that they will be. But like, as a coach, you have to do a whole lot of trying to convince the person that they're as good as you think they are.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you something, in this sport, a lot of us got into it because we have very, very, very low self-value. And convincing me that I'm going to go pull 650 when I've never pulled 650 before is a fucking chore. You know what I mean? That's a huge thing. So like, as a coach, like, you have to be on top of that too. It's so much more than pen and paper. You've learned that with Joe in a pretty profound way. Do your part as an athlete, and definitely as a coach, encouraging people. But you need to learn to encourage yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Long and short of it, sports psychology is real, and it can really change your mindset on things. So don't be afraid to delve into it. specifically meditation and visualization.
There's a reason why these major college football programs have a budget for sports psychology. Yeah. People on staff, sports psychologists on staff for these things.
And it's not going to take you any more than 5 minutes a day, maybe 10.
Yeah, if you don't really believe you're going to hit a PR lift, how do you expect to believe that you're going to come back from a devastating injury? Because they happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's a new level of suck. Mm-hmm. Putting 10 pounds on your squat,
right?
Like, but having to rebuild it from nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't believe in that extra 10 pounds, you don't believe that you're going to come back from injury.
Yeah,
like, you got a long way to go. So, I mean, working on yourself daily is important.
Mind is a powerful tool.
I'll be honest with you too. It's kind of funny that I ended up getting hurt anyway, but I started doing some affirmations leading up to my meet in March, and I think those things, it was my best prep ever despite having gotten hurt. But I 100% believe those affirmations is what led to me hitting PR after PR after PR that last 6 weeks of prep. Like, I mean, it just went outstanding.
Yeah.
So I believe there's something to it. And you know what? It did help my confidence coming back from yet another injury. It's like, fuck, well, I've done it and I've done it and I've done it and I've done it. I'm going to do it again. It's not that fucking intimidating to come back from something.
Right.
I mean, it's not, but it's still more, that 10 pounds extra on my squat is still more intimidating to me for some reason, but it gets better. Yep. It's a practice. Sports psychology, believing in yourself is a muscle that has to be worked often.
Yeah.
You have to test it, and that's the truth. So that's it. End rant.
Dan jokes.
Dad jokes. Dan jokes.
Dan jokes. Man, I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
I don't either, bro.
That was an odd one.
Are we going to Dad Says Jokes again?
I believe I have some saved, so I have some old Dad Says Jokes that should be on here that I have not looked through. There's some posing advice that I saved because for some reason I want to get good at posing. I don't know why.
What do you call a reluctant potato? A hesitator.
What's green, fuzzy, has 4 legs, and will kill you if it falls out of a tree?
What's that?
A pool table.
It absolutely will.
So my girlfriend is leaving me after I accidentally broke her glasses. She said she can't see me anymore.
So I asked my dad the other day if I was adopted, and he said, "Of course not. Why would I have picked you?"
Damn, that's brutal. I bumped into a beautiful woman when I was out, and she asked for my number and then my insurance info.
So I have a terrible fear of tsunamis.
Yeah.
Comes in waves. Blat.
So my wife asked me, are you sometimes surprised at how little people change? And I said, actually, it's the process is the same. They just have tinier clothes.
Today I saw a midget climbing down a prison wall, and I thought to myself, that's a little condescending.
I don't want to follow that up. That one was pretty good. I think that's a good one.
I just did the search for dad jokes, like hashtag dad jokes, and it yielded some pretty good stuff.
Yeah,
it did. It was pretty good.
That was a good one. I like that last one. Actually, the past two were actually pretty good. I enjoyed it.
It was pretty a little incorrect.
A little condescending. That's good. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to the Sip It and Rip It podcast. If you made it this far, don't forget to rate us 5 stars if you haven't already on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see our ugly mugs while we talk about shit. Apple Podcasts.
All them things.
At Nathan Skedios, at ZG_Summershed Journey.
Or at Coleman_Barbell. It's fun.
Or at Sip It and Rip It. Follow us on all of those socials if you'd like. And we'll see you next week when hopefully, as long as things go according to plan, we'll have Zach Marstiller on and we'll talk about some of our favorite powerlifting and some of his experiences. And
are we talking about multiply?
We are talking about multiply.
I love Zach Morstiller. That's
all. he is an awesome dude, and we're actually gonna train with him. It'll be real fun. So
he's really fucking strong. He's stronger than me. I don't know if he's stronger than Nathan anymore, but he's stronger than me.
I don't know. We'll find out. We'll train with him on Sunday. We'll find out.
Awesome dude.
I wonder if we can get Austin to train with us on Sunday. Does he train on Sundays?
If he did, it would be a bench press day for him because I do his programming. I know he'd do his Monday workout probably with us.
That'd be fine because I'd be benching too.
Yeah.
I guess
so it's just pretty much me and Zach's the only one doing exclusively lower, aren't we?
Well, I'll be squatting and benching and accessory work.
He's doing deadlifts for sure.
He's doing deadlifts for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Not that you guys need to know that.
But we might have wanted to discuss it. You got to hear us discuss it.
All right. I guess that's it.